When we're young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Yes, hello there. Good morning, everybody out there listening to another edition of Join Up Dots. It's nice to have you on board, and of course, you wouldn't go anywhere else. Not when we've got amazing stories like we've got today. And I'll be honest with you, I kind of like the travel-y kind of stories when somebody has done a leap of faith and they've quit their corporate job and then they're literally navigating through the countries of the world with their laptop. I kind of get inspired by those, and I'm sure you're going to be inspired by today's guest, because he is a man who has learnt the secret of travelling the world whilst being funded by something he already had. If that sounds a bit cryptic, all will be revealed in the show. But it's true to say that today's guest does not follow a normal path in life. Starting his adult working life after finishing his education in the Netherlands, he worked for an arbitrage trading firm for 6 years. It was a normal kind of job that many of us have endured, long hours, boring work, but hey, at the end of the day, it paid. And isn't that why most of us start going to work in the first place anyway? But he knew that he wanted more. So at the age of 32, he reevaluated his life goals and came up with a question to ponder. Did he want to slave away at a mildly stimulating profession so he could perch atop a pile of assets at the ripe age of 65? And after asking himself that question, he knew it was time to leap into the unknown. So in March of 2010, with no backup plan or prospect of gainful employment, he quit his job to pursue his lifelong dream, ultimate freedom. How exciting is that? So how many of you listeners would be brave enough to do just that? And of course, was our guest brave or simply frightened that life was slipping away? So let's find out as we bring onto the show to start joining up the dots of his life, the one and only Jasper Ribbers. How are you, Jasper?
I'm great, David. Thank you for having me on the show.
It is lovely to have you. And where is life at the moment?
Life is currently in Los Angeles.
And have you chosen that, or is that just where it's happened? Because you can literally lay your hat anywhere, I imagine.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, the reason why I came over here to LA is working on a few projects with a friend of mine who lives here. So, and I've always found that when you're working with somebody, it's far more productive if you're actually in the same location than if you're on the other side of the world and you're trying to communicate over Skype, and there's time zone differences and all that kind of stuff.
So what are you working on? Because, no, actually, I'm not going to ask that. I'm going to build up to that question because that's the big question. But the question, first of all, is have you gained what you were looking for, ultimate freedom?
Absolutely. I am pretty much location independent. I can work from anywhere in the world as long as I have an internet connection. I do everything I do on my laptop. And, as you know, these days, you can go to the most remote little island in the South Pacific and you'll still have Wi-Fi. It's everywhere. So yeah, absolutely. I feel like I can do anything I want. I can spend my time with whoever I want, and I can be anywhere in the world.
Does it amaze you, though, that Wi-Fi is literally everywhere? Because I can't get my head round it, really, how it works, first of all. Because this time last Saturday, I was talking to a gentleman who was living on his own island in just outside Panama. And he said to me, he was on a shack or a little house on this island, and he had internet, and he could sit there watching Netflix and on Facebook and all that kind of stuff. And it blows my mind that you are literally, wherever you are on Earth, you can get the football scores. It's beyond belief.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely amazing, and I don't understand all the technical stuff behind it, but we in Holland we have an expression, and it goes something like, "Don't ask why, just take advantage of it." You know what I mean? So, I was just watching the World Cup from my laptop, just a few weeks ago, and I'm using a VPN which allows me to sort of fool the internet into believing that I'm actually in Holland, so I can watch the football games with Dutch commentary, which I really enjoy. So these days with all the technology in place, it doesn't really matter where you are. You can, as long as you have an internet connection, you have access to everything.
Of course, being from Holland, though, you did actually have a World Cup this year, didn't you? I don't think us English people actually got involved in it at all. It stopped before it even started for us.
Yeah, it hasn't been a great success for you guys, I suppose. Though, I have to say Costa Rica, it's a pretty good team,
They are, but we should still beat them, shouldn't we? We should still beat them. God.
I mean, they did really well this year, and I was actually in Costa Rica like a few months ago, so I did have some sympathy for the country until we were facing them, of course.
Who do the Dutch like beating more than anyone? Is it Germany? Are they your sort of nemesis?
Absolutely. There's nothing that we get more pleasure out than beating the Germans.
Yeah, we're a bit like that, really. It just rarely happens. That's the problem.
That is the problem. But when it does happen, it's very enjoyable.
We're still talking about 5-1 about, I don't know, 8 years ago or 10 years ago when Michael Owen scored a hat-trick or whatever he did, and we still...
Right, I remember that.
Yeah.
I was actually living in England at the time.
It was a big night for us. It was one of those days that we were going to take on the world and beat them in their own backyard, and we've just never kicked on from there. It's just dreadful. Anyway, I'm not going to get depressed on that, Jasper. That's not what we're here for. This is about positive motivational speaking, and we don't want to talk about the English football team and just bring us all down. So you were you was a man who you leapt, basically. There's no doubt about it. You was in gainful employment in the Netherlands as an arbitrage trader. What is that for people who are sitting there listening to this story? What actually is an arbitrage trader?
Basically, an arbitrage trader is somebody who takes advantage of small price differences between different markets. So just to give you a quick example, British Petroleum, the big English oil company, they are listed in London, but they're also listed in New York. But it's the same share that's listed. So if the share trades a little higher in New York than it does in London, then you can sell the one in New York, buy the one in London, and you make a small profit. And then if you do that a couple 100,000 times a day, then in the end, the small profits add up, and you go home with a nice sort of bag of cash.
So why did you have to go to an office to do that? Couldn't you do that now with a laptop? Wouldn't that be something that with your history of doing it and your expertise that you could still do now?
It's definitely possible, but one of the most important aspects of being successful with this kind of trading is the speed and the software that you have. And it's competing from your laptop against all the big guys in the US and in Europe is going to be very difficult. I mean, it's possible, but when I quit my job as a trader, I chose not to do it because I didn't want to have the sort of stress that comes along with trading with your own money. Because what will happen is 24 hours a day, you'll just be thinking about the positions you have, and you'll be thinking about how your day went, and I didn't want to do that.
But it must have been a job that you wanted to do at the beginning. Was it something that was it the kind of show me the money kind of job, or was it a path that you've seen other people go into? How did you actually end up in that career, which ultimately at the age of 32, which is probably kind of prime age really, made you think, hang on, there's got to be more to life than this?
Yeah, no, I definitely enjoyed my job. I didn't hate it at all. I've always loved playing games, and to me it was just playing this big game with people from all over the world. You know what I mean? So I was just sitting in front of a bunch of flat screens, and the screens were full of numbers, and it was my job to make the right trades and to make money for the company, and eventually for myself as well. So it was definitely something that I enjoyed doing, and it wasn't just the money that made me get into it. I wasn't really looking forward to having a job with like long meetings and like documents to review and all that kind of stuff. The idea of just sitting behind a screen and playing like this big game really appealed to me.
I was a trader for a little while and it bored me stupid. I did it for I went through my training, I got trained up on it, and I think I did it for about 3 months, and then I quit. And I was just sitting next to blokes basically looking at screens with their hands behind their head, waiting for a moment that they could leap forward and press a couple of buttons. And I just thought, I can't do this. This isn't stimulating for me. And it seemed to be, hours and hours of inactivity for that 1 second of leap forward and bang that button and make that trade.
Yep, I mean, that's a pretty good description of what it is. A lot of people think it's really exciting and hectic and like everyone's screaming all the time, but in reality, 80% of the time, or maybe even more, there's just not that much going on, and it kind of feels like you're just wasting your time behind a desk.
So was it something that was an epiphany when you decided to leap, or was it something that gradually built up on you until you thought, no, I've got to really do something? Were you going in every day sort of thinking, another day in the office, or did it just hit like a bolt?
No, it definitely built up. The first 3 years, I was extremely excited about the job, but after about 3 years or so, I didn't really learn much new. So it kind of became really repetitive, and I kind of started feeling like I was kind of like a monkey, just doing the same trick over and over again. And after 5 years, I already got quite bored with it, but then I got the opportunity to move to Chicago and trade in the Chicago office. And that kind of gave me an extra little bit of motivation to keep doing it, at least for 1 more year.
And what was Chicago like for you? Was it you went from Amsterdam, I imagine, where you were trading, over to Chicago, so it was a world apart, and it was just that change of scenery that put a little bit of spark back into you?
Yeah, and it's like a different trading strategy that you're using. It's a different market, so it's a different environment, different people that you're working with. So that all that new input definitely gave that extra spark to what I was doing, and I enjoyed my time in Chicago a lot, but I still knew in the back of my mind that this wasn't like I wasn't going to do this forever. It's I knew that. The thing is, I didn't really know what else to do, because this trading thing is really specific. I didn't really have any other level of work experience other than like delivering water bottles when I was a student. So I had no idea what else to do, and because the money was really good, I just thought it would be stupid to not sit it out for a few years and pile up a little bit of savings.
So when did it happen? When was the leap of faith?
So in 2009, after the crash, the markets really slowed down, and our sort of earnings were very much related to how much the markets were moving. So at that time, the future didn't look that bright for our company, at least for the next few years. So I just figured this was the perfect time to make that decision, and I was 32 at the time. So I also felt that if I wasn't going to make the decision at that time, then it was going to only get harder and harder to make it as you're getting older and you're getting more sort of settled into that frame that I was in, and maybe I'll settle down with a wife or have kids and stuff like that. So I really felt like it was a now or never thing.
And when it happened, the fascinating thing from what you were saying there was you had no backup plan. Other than delivering water bottles, you had nothing else to do. Now, that must have been terrifying, knowing that you're walking away from this salary, you're walking away from a career that most people would look at and go, that's a great career. You know, you've really done well for yourself, and you haven't got anything to back it up other than delivering water bottles, and you still walked away from it. It's obviously panned out well for you, which is marvelous, and that's why you're on the show now. But it must have been classed as madness. There must have been so many people at that time going, Jasper, what the hell are you doing? Think what you've got. How did you overcome that?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. For me, the most important thing is I was imagining myself growing older and not having taken that opportunity to sort of create the perfect lifestyle for yourself. And I did not want to cope with the regrets that I saw coming. You know, it just that just seems such a horrific thought to me that I just felt like I didn't have an option. Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of doubts for sure. I had no idea what I was going to do, and I knew that at some point my savings would start running out. So I couldn't just sit on the beach for the rest of my life and drink cocktails and surf. I knew that I had to do something, and I kind of just trusted in the fact that I will eventually figure something out. And the good thing is I did have a fair amount of savings, so I knew that I had some time to figure things out. But it wasn't just about the money and like worrying about like, hey, am I going to get a new job or what am I going to do? It was also, I just wanted to be by myself and just explore the planet and sort of have time to kind of reflect on my own life and figure out what I really wanted from it.
Was there any time during that, when you had actually leapt and you walked out, was there any time within the sort of first 2 or 3 months that you almost thought, right, I'm going to go back to corporate land. It's what I'm comfortable with. I've known it for the last 6 or 7 years. That is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to step back and say, okay, I've had a moment of madness. Or was it totally one way? Once you did that, you knew that you had to do everything in your power to make your future become reality?
Yeah, absolutely. The second one was the case. I did not intend to ever go back to an office. And I really promised to myself that I would do everything in my power to create a different sort of lifestyle. So no, I never had any sort of like intention to go back into the corporate world at all.
This is an amazing part of your journey, and this is really what I want to emphasize to our listeners, because we do have these conversations on a daily basis with successful people that have taken the leap of faith. They've found their path. They've moved into areas that they're not comfortable with and overcome that fear. But so many people that do that haven't got the answers, and so many people that are unwilling to do that think that you have to have the answers before you actually start, and it's just simply not true, isn't it? It is the ability to just keep on moving and trying things and having successes and surrounding yourself with other like-minded people that gives you an impetus that perhaps you couldn't have perceived when you actually took that first step away from corporate.
Yeah, absolutely. The funny thing is, once you don't have a full-time job to occupy your mind, suddenly it feels like the world just opens up and you start seeing opportunities everywhere. And one of the mistakes that I made was I just jumped on tons of opportunities that I saw at the same time. So I was doing like 5 things at the same time, and I was doing none of them really well, but all of them sort of like half. And therefore a lot of things that I tried didn't really work out. But during that process, I learned a lot of things about doing like online businesses and stuff, and it sort of like guided me in the direction. And through that process, I ended up where I am now, and now I have a very good idea about what I want to do. But I didn't know at the time when I quit my job. So it's definitely, you don't need to know what you want to do, because even if you do, that might change in a year, because you might find something else and you jump on it, and then suddenly you realize, wow, I really enjoy doing this. Just to give you an example, I never knew that I enjoyed writing. I was always about numbers and mathematics and that kind of stuff. So if you would have told me a few years ago that I was going to write a book, I would have told you, like, you're crazy. That's totally not me. Does that make sense?
It totally does. But was it you when you was a younger boy? Did you like sort of writing little stories and making tales up when you was a youngster?
Not really, no. I never saw myself as a writer, and I never knew I enjoyed it so much. And that's what I'm trying to say. Like, it's once you have the freedom to sort of engage in any type of activity that you want, you'll find things that you really enjoy and that you're passionate about that you would never have guessed. And that's sort of the point I'm trying to make.
Let's play a little snippet of some motivational speech that was done recently, and I play this on most of the shows now because it really emphasizes the point you're making. I'm just going to play this, and I'd like to get your thoughts afterwards.
My father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that was possible for him. And so he made a conservative choice. Instead, he got a safe job as an accountant. And when I was 12 years old, he was let go from that safe job. And our family had to do whatever we could to survive. I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want. So you might as well take a chance on doing what you love.
That kind of says what you're saying, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, another way to look at it is, most successful people have failed many times. And, I really like this. I can't remember who said this, but somebody once told me, you're going to fail before you be successful. So you might as well fail fast. Get those failures in, because that's the success lies behind those failures. And so yeah, I definitely that the little snippet that you played definitely resonates with me very well.
I think what you're saying is so true because it resonates with me as well. When I leapt for my corporate job, I'd actually been on a journey for, I reckon, about 5 years, building online sites and working in an online environment. And it was that kind of, that hobby really that made me see what other people were doing in the world and thinking, this has got to be better than sitting in an office every day. There's people, literally taking their laptops around and plonking them down and picking up the Wi-Fi and doing this. Why the hell am I coming to this desk every day? But my journey was actually about 5 years. And when you were saying that you did loads of things and you were failing or you didn't quite do enough of them, I was exactly that as well. And I would work really hard on something. And looking back on it, I think it was almost near the tipping point of being successful before I thought, oh, it's not quite working, I'll try something else. And I look at them now, and they're still floating around the online space, these websites and that. And funnily enough, a lot of them have become more successful since I've done nothing with them at all than they were when I was actually sort of pushing on, thinking this is the key to my freedom. But you find through those failures, you do find something, or it starts getting a plan in your head. And when you find that and you follow that one course until success, as they call it, focus, you really do get a head start on everybody else. So I don't think what you ever did was failures in any shape or form. I think it was just the stepping stones towards finding something that feels naturally good to you, plays to your strengths, and fills your passions.
Yeah. That makes sense to me, yeah. There's different ways of looking at it, and I like the way you look at it because it's much more positive. Because failure sounds very like negative and dark, and people are afraid of it. But in a sense, I feel like it's something that should be embraced because, yeah, just like you said, it's more like a stepping stone towards success. So one of the things that I've learned is not to be afraid of failing, because it even if you either fail and then you've learned something, or you succeed and then you're successful. So either way is kind of a positive outcome.
You must have been scared of failing when you was an arbitrage trader, because it was playing within the margins, wasn't it? And you can fail big time. I used to sit there almost giving myself a stomach ulcer, thinking, is this the right time? Is this the right time? Is this, boom, and then doing it. And afterwards, and it was that, as I was saying, you sit there all day doing nothing at all, and then suddenly you're almost doing your nutting, trying to find the right time to press this button. And it's just living on the edge of failure all the time in being an arbitrage trader.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really, really frightened in the first few weeks of my career when they threw me in front of the lines, and I just had to start trading, and yeah, it was very, very scary. And also knowing that most of the people who started at my company didn't make it through the first 6 months. So, and then there was like the competitive environment where people were very sort of direct in their communications and not really forgiving if you make some mistakes. I got yelled at quite a few times in my first few months. So it's definitely not a very comfortable environment to be in when you're just starting out.
But did it train you, looking back on it, did it train you to overcome the fear of failure?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely did. It definitely builds some confidence when you're trying something that's not that easy, and you're really, really scared. And then after a while, when you get the hang of it and you become successful at it, that's definitely like a good sort of positive reference experience that it can help you in the future.
It's amazing to me, though, that every time I have conversations with people on this show, they all have that ability to overcome the fear. They all have that ability to live just on the edge of their comfort zone, because they know by stepping past that comfort zone, they're going to improve. And they're going to go into areas they've never been to. And they're going to meet people that are ahead of them. And they're the exciting movers and shakers that can show you the path and show you the possibilities of what's going to be happening. Now, you take it away from these conversations, and I talk to, the people in the street, the normal people, the 9-to-5 type of people. They're totally a different ballgame. They're very much just keeping to what they've got. They don't want to lose it. It's just a job. It's just employment, and we're lucky to be in a job, and might not have a job next year, and all that kind of stuff. It's a totally different mindset to the successful, to the maintainers, I would say, who maintain just what they've got. Yeah,
absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And they say that learning happens outside of the comfort zone, and that's definitely it's definitely true, I think. And well, they call it a comfort zone for a reason. It's very comfortable to be in the comfort zone. So it can be a bit scary to step out of it. But I think it's something that you can kind of train, and it's not even just about quitting your job and doing your own thing. I mean, even within your job, you can step outside of your comfort zone. You can take on tasks that you are not sure about if you can do them, and that way you can grow within an organization as well using that same mentality. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. It does make total sense. And so when you first sort of started finding your freedom, do you remember sort of meeting somebody that you kind of went, oh my God, this is like meeting Yoda or something? This person seems to have all the answers. Because we all benchmark ourselves against success. And when we see these people, we kind of go, oh, that's what I want to be. And, it's all right for them because, it's just naturally easy for them because you don't see all those dots, those stepping stones leading up to it. Did you have any of those kind of moments when you saw somebody and you were just in awe of them because they just seemed to know everything?
I wouldn't say it was like one person that I thought was doing everything right. I kind of just took small bits from a lot of different people. One of the great aspects of traveling is that you get to meet a lot of people, and often you meet people who are in a similar boat. Or even when I was traveling on holidays, when I still had my job, I sometimes met these people who were, just traveling the world and working from their laptops, and that's kind of how I developed this idea as well by meeting other people who did it. So I would just, every time I would meet somebody, I would just think like, hey, what is this person doing right? What can I learn from this person? And then just kind of trying to implement that. And if you meet like 50 people and you implement from every single person what they're doing right, then you're at some point you're going to do a lot of things right?
Yeah, absolutely. You can't fail to improve, can you?
Yeah, and it's just really inspiring to meet people who are doing different things, and it's just everybody has like really good insights. Every single person that you meet will have a few good insights that you can learn from. So I actually started focusing a little bit more on spending time with fellow entrepreneurs, because I've really seen the value of it. So what I do now is I try to be in locations where a lot of sort of like-minded people typically reside or hang out, and I try to really connect with people. I try to find people through common friends and see, and try to sort of like extend my network and meet up with people and talk to them and ask them questions like what did it take for you to reach this point and to be successful, and really consciously try to learn from them.
So for people in a corporate world, or they're just in a job, or they're in a situation where they want to do something like yourself, but they haven't got that ability of surrounding themselves with like-minded, positive individuals, are there any tips that you could suggest that they can find those connections and build up that network?
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing is to be really proactive. I would suggest to go online and just find a bunch of people that inspire you, and then literally just shoot them a message, because you'll actually be surprised how often people will respond. Like if you even if you think it's like a really big name, if you hit up Tim Ferriss or something, then maybe there's a smaller chance, but you never know, right? I mean, one of the things I've learned as well is not to make negative assumptions. I used to make them all the time, and I think a lot of people do. So instead of thinking, oh, I'm not going to hit up this person because he's never going to respond, you don't know. Like it's disempowering to make negative assumptions. So if you don't know something, you might as well make the assumption that empowers you. So if you think like, yeah, this person is definitely going to get back to me, then that empowers you to actually send a message. You see what I mean?
No, I agree with that totally. And you do rarely get a no. And that's been the thing. Getting this show off the ground was the Achilles heel, really, of my fear of reaching out to complete strangers and saying to them,
right,
look, I'm creating this show. I've never recorded an episode. Would you be on it? And you kind of think to yourself, why the hell would they do it? There's no reach, there's no audience, there's no way of selling their products to it. And they would say yes, and they would. And I think the successful people and the entrepreneurs like the fact, number one, that you're trying because they've been through it themselves, and they like to give something back as well. And I'm still a nobody compared to the online giants, but I'm starting to find traction in my life where people are coming through to me and asking questions and stuff. And I always, whether it's the right answer or wrong answer, I give them my honest opinion, because I know what it feels like to reach out to somebody, and it is probably the most important thing you can do. If you have got an idea, if you've got a passion, if you've got a dream that you want to actually achieve, look online, because that's the best place. You can just look online and you can check across the world and find like-minded people that are already doing it, and ask them, how did they do it? How did they feel? Have they got any tips for you? And I guarantee, 90% of the time, probably more, they will actually come back. And you know what you've done then? You've built up a network and you've built up a connection. And as long as you don't keep on hassling them all the time, it's very, very useful.
Absolutely. And another thing you can do is go to conferences. Conferences are a great opportunity to meet a lot of people. Like, for example, I went to a travel bloggers conference in October because I am doing a travel blog. And I met so many people there, and that's just like you can make so many connections in just a few days. And when you've actually met somebody in person, you're also much more likely to build a connection with the person, and that way you can just get a lot of value.
So if we sort of step back to your ultimate freedom plan, we now know that you've had this leap of faith. We now know that you jumped without any backup plan. You didn't have the answers. You just thought, my God, I've got to figure something out. Did you then have a plan of where you wanted to travel to, or did you find yourself in an area for a while before the actual traveling Dutchman sort of brand became a reality?
Yeah, the first country I went to was Brazil, and the reason I went there is because I had a friend who was in between jobs, and he was gonna spend a few months in Brazil, and he invited me. He said, like, hey, if you quit your job, like, why don't you just come over and we'll hang out on the beach, and I'll show you around. And so that was kind of my first step to go to Brazil.
And you stayed there for a while, or was it just for a few weeks?
Yeah, no, I ended up staying there for 3 months, and that was a great experience because I completely fell in love with the country, and I'd say Brazil is still my favorite country. So that was definitely like a great place to start.
And then what sort of made you move on from there?
Well, I didn't just want to be in one country. My aspiration was really to learn like different cultures, to explore different countries. Like, I had this curiosity about the world that I just wanted to go to places and see what it was like. So, after my first few months in Brazil, I think I've been over 50 countries in the last 4 years or so. So I definitely, for a few years, I was just bouncing around like crazy, going to this place for a few weeks and then go to the next place. And it's kind of like globetrotting around the world.
Were there any countries that you went to and almost as soon as you got there, you thought, hang on, don't think I like this? I've spoken to quite a lot of people who say if you're traveling around the world, you've really got to go with gut intuition. And they've been in certain places where people have gone, that's a dangerous place to go, and they've gone there and they thought, no, this is all right. And they've been in other places where they just say the vibe felt wrong and they moved on very, very quickly. Did you have any of those kind of experiences?
I actually enjoy going to lots of different type of locations, and I've never really had that experience where I arrived in a country and I was like, oh, this sucks, I don't want to be here. I think it's because I'm just really curious about places. So even if it's not the most flashy and exciting place to be, I still enjoy just walking down the street and just getting a sense of what people are about and what local life looks like. But the one place that I thought was pretty sort of dooming was a city in China that I went to. It's called Guangzhou. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No, I haven't.
I was there because of the Canton Fair, which is like one of the biggest, if not the biggest, trading fairs in the world. And seriously, Guangzhou was so depressing. It was completely gray. Like, the sky was just filled with smog. And I think there's like 15 million people living there. But have you ever played this game SimCity?
Yes.
So it almost seemed like somebody literally just created one gray, like very cheap sort of concrete apartment complex, and then just hit the copy paste button for like 2,000 times. You know what I mean? It was so depressing that I remember when I left, I was with my friend, and we're sitting in the taxi back to the airport, and we're discussing like how much money would somebody have to give you to spend like 1 year here. You know what I mean? And I was just like, wow, I don't even know if there's any amount that will make me stay in this place for a year. It just feels so depressing.
But that's the beauty of your life, isn't it? That you can make those decisions and you can move to where the sun is shining brightly, and that must be liberating.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the fact that you can escape the winter, you know, like when I found out, like after a few years of traveling, I found out that in the southern hemisphere, when it's winter in the north, it's summer in the south. So so I decided, hey, I'm never gonna have a winter again in my life.
And have you not had snow? You haven't had a sort of European winter?
No, the only time is when I go back to Europe to go skiing with my family.
Which obviously you want winter, you want snow then. That would just be stupid, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've tried skiing on the grass, but no, it doesn't really work that well.
No.
And then, like, the lifts are closed as well, so you have to walk up the hill, and it's kind of tiring, you know. So yeah, I definitely recommend for people who want to go skiing. I would recommend snow.
So just before we play the Steve Jobs speech, which the whole theme of the show is based around, has there been, as we call, a big dot in your life where you look back and you go, yes, that was the moment that Jasper Ribbers really started to come of age? And it doesn't necessarily have to be the leap of faith. It might be after the leap of faith. It might be before then. But you look back and you go, yeah, that was it. That was the moment when things changed for me. Did you have that big dot?
I think it was when I started my travel blog. And the reason is I was very apprehensive about starting it because I kept worrying about whether people would find it interesting, like whether people would want to hear my story, or if I was, you know, I didn't see myself as a writer, and I was going to write in English as well, which is not my native language. So I was really sort of apprehensive about starting this blog, and I postponed it for a long time, actually. And at some point, one of my friends just told me to just launch it. And I remember I created a Facebook page for the blog, and I wasn't even planning on launching it yet. But the Facebook page, for some reason, it went live, and I didn't realize it, but people were able to see it. So suddenly, like, I go on my Facebook and I see that people are liking my page. And I go, oh, shit, like, now I kind of have to launch it because, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then I just, like, quickly, you know, I spent a few days and I just, you know, sort of made everything look sort of acceptable and quickly wrote a bunch of extra stories so I wouldn't have just one blog post. And that was sort of a really interesting moment and for me because that's when I sort of got over the fear of just, you know, putting myself out there, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense, and I have exactly the same story. When I decided to do this show, I first of all had the fear of reaching out to people, and then when they started coming back to me and going, yes, we'll be on this show, it was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to do this. I don't know anything about this. I don't know how to structure a show. I don't know how to do an interview. Right, okay, I've just got to do this. And then I started recording, and I got 30 recorded, and I thought, I'm going to launch. And then I thought, I don't want to launch. This is going to be bad. And you have all those doubts. You have all those things in your head until you actually launch and nobody notices. And this is the key message, really, that I want everyone to, and I pretty much say the same thing every single episode. If you've got an idea, a dream in your life that you want to do, especially in the online environment, hardly anyone's going to notice when you first do it.
Yeah,
and so it makes no difference when you launch. Once you start getting a bit of momentum and stuff, hopefully by that stage you've done it consistently and you've practiced and you've built it into something that you're proud of. But when you first start, I spent more time in the first 30 days looking at something and thinking, oh my God, I've done that wrong, and having to go back and change 30 episodes than anything else. Now it's a lot more streamlined because I know what I'm going to do. But you can start ugly, can't you? You can start ugly, and it's the most awful website, the awful blog, the awful product or whatever, and it really doesn't matter because no one's going to notice.
Exactly. Yeah, it takes a long time to build a substantial audience online. And also, like, you know, we're naturally always worried about what other people think, right? And it's very hard to sort of get rid of that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think the best thing you can do is just go ahead and launch it, you know, whatever you're planning to do. And It's funny. I don't know if you've ever heard about John D. Loomis's story.
Yes.
Like he has the Entrepreneur on Fire podcast, which is a very popular one. And I really like the way he started because he had a mentor, and he had the same fear as we all have. He thought it wasn't good enough, and he didn't want to launch it, so he kept postponing it. And at some point, his mentor told him, "Okay, you're going to launch today, and if you don't do that, I am going to fire you. I'm not going to be your mentor anymore." And that created so much fear within himself because he's thinking, "Oh shit! If my mentor quits, then what am I going to do?" So this created such a sense of accountability for himself, and so he just launched it the day that she told him that. And it's funny because now he calls it the $100,000 mistake because that he didn't start it a month earlier, because now he's making like $100,000 a month of it.
I think he's making more than that, isn't he?
Yeah, he's probably making more now. But the interesting thing is, he calls it the $100,000 mistake that he postponed his podcast launch for 1 month, and that just shows that the best thing you can do is just get it out there, and you can improve later on. It doesn't really matter. It's the same. I mean, I'm about to launch a podcast in a few days. And, I already know that the first 5 episodes, I just listened to them, and I can already come up with like 20 things that aren't perfect, But instead of spending like way too much time trying to perfect every single episode, I'm just going to launch this, and then I'll just make the improvement in the next 10 episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, congratulations on that, because it's an absolute ride doing this. It's the most amazing thing that I've ever done in my life. And I was exactly the same. When I launched, I didn't hold back on launching. I had certain things that stopped me, but I was ready to go. It was just the way that life was sort of occurring. But my problem was different. In my head, it was going to be the most brilliant podcast that anyone had ever heard. And I couldn't get my vision out. And that was the problem. So the first sort of 5, I remember I hit about episode 35 when it started to think, yeah, this is starting to get close to what I first envisioned. And even now, into 150, I would say that we're 70% there. But there's still like 30% that I can kind of almost picture in my mind. It's like I've created this amazing symphony that's so perfect, but when I actually sit down and play it on the piano, it's not as good as I can get in my brain, But I just think that is practice. I think it's practice, and I think it's momentum. And then you start getting guests who already know what you're about, so you don't have to go in cold, and you just build it up, build it up, build it up. I've just released episode 82 today, and I can already see a momentum happening that wasn't visible 30 episodes ago. Now I'm having people coming to me saying, could I be on the show? That was really hard at the beginning. I was just chipping away. So it's, what we're saying, it's not overnight. You have to have perseverance. You've got to try different things. And if you fail fast, and then get the next one out of the way. And just keep on failing fast until you find something that you think, hang on, this kind of feels right. I think I might be able to do this, and it's got legs, and I can feel the passion inside me.
Yeah, you don't learn anything before you start. So, it doesn't really make sense to try and come up with this perfect product that you envision and spend months and months like trying to perfect it in your mind, because once you put it out there, there's always going to be things that you want to improve, because it's impossible to create something perfect in your head, right? It's just much faster just to come up with something simple, put it out there, and then build on it, and you'll get feedback from people, and that's where the learning curve really, really steepens when you actually put something out there.
Well, I'm going to play a speech from Steve Jobs now, and then I'm going to ask your point of view on it, and then I'm going to ask about the product that I'm aware and the book that you've written recently, because it is a fascinating thing. And as I said in the introduction, it really has helped you travel the world whilst being funded by something you already had. So this is Steve Jobs.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. you can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
So are those words true to yourself, Jasper?
Yeah, absolutely. What I think about when I hear this is the idea of, sort of carving out your own path. And I remember we talked earlier about when you're starting something new, often it's hard to get support for it in your environment, like your family, your friends, and that's because they don't see that path yet because it's not there yet. But the interesting thing is, once you've created that path for yourself and you connect the dots, then suddenly people around you can see that you've managed to create your own path, and then suddenly everyone becomes way more supportive. And then suddenly people will say things like, "Wow, that's awesome what you're doing," and like, I always knew you had it in you, and stuff like that. But when you're actually starting the journey, most people will say, "Well, are you crazy? Like, are you just leaving everything behind, and are you giving everything up?" And it's because they can't see that path yet.
I had a chap at my old office, and I won't mention his name because I'm sure he's not listening anyway, but I was always the guy with the sort of self-development books, the Think and Grow Rich, Change Your Life in 1 week, the 4-hour work week, all those kind of books. And I had one, and it was something like expand your mind and create amazing futures or something like that. And this chap picked it up, and he didn't realise I was just behind him. And he said, "Oh, is this one of David's books?" Yeah, trouble is he never does anything amazing, and he never will. And I remember hearing him say this, and then I kind of held back for about 2 minutes, and then I walked back. So it was like I hadn't heard this. And it really, that was one of my dots as well. That was one of the moments that I thought to myself, in the nicest way, screw you. You don't know anything about me, and you don't know what I'm doing, and you don't know what I'm going to be achieving. You're just basing your statement on yourself. And it really did power me on. And I was pretty burnt up by it for a while. But I look back on it now and I think, I'm glad he said that, because that is one of those things that drives me on to do this and put myself out there. But it's absolutely true what you're saying as well. Once you start getting out there, somebody said to me the other day, it's like a success vacuum. At the beginning, no one comes anywhere near you. And as you become more successful, they start gravitating towards you. It's like you're sucking in success, and then you find yourself surrounded by success, which brings more success, and that momentum just carries you forward. It's fascinating to see it happen.
Yeah, I mean, they say that you are about as successful as the five closest people around you. So one way to sort of help you being successful is just to surround yourself with successful people, and you're absolutely right. Once you become successful yourself, then you see other people trying to be around you to do the same thing. So it's quite an interesting sort of dynamic.
It is. It's kind of like personal. I don't know what it is. It's like becoming a personal magnet. No one wants to know you. Steve Martin once said, "Be so good until they can't ignore you anymore," or something along those lines. And it really emphasizes this whole conversation where at the beginning no one's going to pay any attention, but once you start getting it going and you've really put in the hours and you've practiced, then you create a force that can't be reckoned with, and you basically can't fight it. It becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and almost becomes effortless. But it's only effortless because you have spent the hours, the weeks, the years, whatever, building those foundations to make it seem effortless.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's what's interesting about being with successful people is, well, first of all, obviously you can exchange a lot of knowledge, but I wouldn't say that's even the biggest thing. The biggest thing is just trying to sort of figure out what their mindset is, and what is it in them, within themselves that makes them successful, and trying to like just kind of by osmosis, trying to become more like that person. It's like things like what I've noticed in people that are very successful is that their drive, their effort. Like it's often not so much about talent and luck. It's more about just determination and sheer effort, like hard work and pushing through, not giving up, and having that right mindset of positive thinking and not making excuses for yourself, doing the right thing even though it's uncomfortable or it's scary, and that's probably the biggest things I've learned from surrounding myself with successful people.
Just before we get to the end of the show and we put you on the mic and we send you back in time to have a one-on-one with yourself, just before the Steve Jobs speech, I was talking about the product you created that has funded your traveling around the world. And I believe it's called Airbnb. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I started renting out my apartment in Amsterdam about 2 years ago on Airbnb, and I was absolutely swept away by the results. Within a few months, I was having like almost 100% occupancy, and I was making like 2 to 3 times more than I was when I was renting it out on the long term. So it was so mind-blowing to me that I decided that I wanted to spread the word. And it was also such a great experience to share my house and my neighborhood with people from all over the world and meeting a lot of people and making friends. And, I was just so excited about this whole Airbnb thing that I wanted to write a book about it. And I've also noticed that a lot of hosts were kind of missing out on like creating like the best guest experience and therefore being successful with their listing. So I kind of wanted to teach people how to do it, because I spend a lot of time trying to figure out like, well, what's the best way of doing this Airbnb thing, I had so much fun with it. So I really dove into all the materials I could find, and I experimented and I asked guests for feedback. And at some point I felt like I've created such a great system to put in place and running your Airbnb listing. So that's really what the book is about. It's kind of an all-encompassing guide to starting from scratch and just creating that successful Airbnb business and making either a side income or even almost a full-time income, like whatever you want. But it's just about teaching people how to make the most out of their listing and creating the best guest experience as possible.
It must be amazing sitting on a beach in Bora Bora thinking some complete stranger's paying for this.
Yeah, and what's more amazing is that when that person leaves and you read the review and you see that person had a great time and is very, very happy to have the opportunity to stay in your house, I can't think of anything that's more of a win-win situation than that.
So where can people buy this book?
So we actually are giving away the first chapter and as well as the prologue and the introduction of the book for people who want to sort of check it out and get a feel for what the book is about. So if people go to getpaidforyourpad.com, they can leave their email address and we'll send you the free sample pages. And we also sent you a three-part email training course with all sorts of tips and advice on how to improve your Airbnb listing.
We will have that on the show notes. So bringing us to the end, Jasper, this is the motivational powerhouse ending when we send you back in time to have a one-on-one with your younger self. And if you could go back in time and have a chat, what kind of age would you choose? Would it be a much younger Jasper? It's totally up to you. But I'm going to play the tune, and when it fades out, you're up. This is the Sermon on the Mic.
Here we go with the best bit of the show, the Sermon on the Mic, the Sermon on the Mic.
Nice to meet you, young Jasper. You are now 15 years old, and this is older Jasper speaking, who is 37 years old. And in the last 22 years, I have learned a lot about life, and I wanted to give you 5 pieces of advice that will help you reach your full potential. Don't worry about what other people think of you. Only make assumptions that are empowering. Don't set your own limits. Push ahead and find them. In every situation, take right action in spite of your fears. And the last one, focus on the things you fear most, because that's where you'll learn the most and that's where you grow.
And if you had to choose one, Jasper, what would be the main one, the real one that you would want the young Jasper to focus in on?
I would want him to focus on the assumption aspect, because I think that's one of the biggest things I've learned in life, is not to make negative assumption, because it just holds you back and it prevents you from reaching your goals and doing the things you want. So it just makes a lot of sense to me. If you don't know something, then you might as well just believe whatever empowers you to take action and improve.
I've loved having you on the show today. How can they connect with you?
There's a few ways you can connect with me. You can go to thetravelingdutchman.com. You can download my free travel ebook there if that's something that you are interested in. It kind of talks about all the things that I've learned throughout my journey around the world, and a lot of practical tips and tricks on how to make your travels as smooth as possible. So travelingdutchman.com. You can also go, like the site that I mentioned earlier, Get Paid for Your Pad. Once you sign up for my free sample chapters, you'll get a few emails from me, and you feel free to ask any questions about Airbnb hosting, and I will answer every single email personally. So those are the two places that you can find out more about me.
We will have those on the show notes. Jasper, thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up those dots. And please come back again when you have more dots to join up, because I do believe that by joining up those dots and connecting our pasts is the best way to build our futures. Jasper Ribbers, thank you so much.
Thanks, David. It was my pleasure to be on the show. Thank you very much, and good luck.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice that every successful entrepreneur practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.